week on Prepping 2.0.
The serious value of hyper-real prepper fiction.
It's not until you read a story and you really get engrossed into a character who's suffering through hypothermia and then walks you through the steps of the shivering and then is trying to make that fire that maybe you put together, wow, that's not like it says in the Boy Scout manual.
When disaster strikes, will you be prepared? This is Prepping 2.0 with authors and prepping experts Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Online at prepping2-0.com.
Get ready. Prepping 2.0 coming in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher over at Prepping 2.0, along with my co-host, Glenn Tate. Hi, Glenn.
Hey, how are you?
I'm just peachy.
Hey, this is great. This is a rare evening recording. We usually record in the mornings, and we were very glad to get Charlie Hogwood on. He is a prepper fiction and nonfiction author, and we're going to talk about that. One of the things we're going to talk about isn't just his books and stuff like that, which are very interesting. What we're going to talk about is we're going to lace throughout this discussion what preppers can learn from prepping fiction. We all know what you can learn from prepping nonfiction. Why do prepping books matter to preppers? And I think the answer is you learn a ton of stuff, and we'll elaborate on that. But we have the top 100, which is our list of top 100 things that go the quickest in a crisis. And this is on our website, prepping2-0.com, on the right side, prepping2-0.com. We're up to number 85. What is number 85?
Folks, number 85 is lumber. Good idea to get some extra lumber or some scrap lumber or just lumber for the need to build things, to need to repair things, to
board up windows.
Yeah. Right. And this list I always like to mention was created by those who survived the Bosnian collapse back in the early 90s.
Early 90s, yeah.
Yeah, which is like, oh my gosh, a long time ago.
30 years.
But I would also say lumber too, and I think it was something else that was on the list is firewood.
Yeah.
A little bit different. Lumber is obviously treated, it's been planed, but yeah, I think it's very important. So yeah.
And I would think basic things like nails and some braces and things like that.
Stay tuned. There's more things on the list.
Ooh. Like 15 more things.
Yes.
That's right. Hey, I wanted to mention lurkers. Lurkers come out of the shadows. And what we mean by that is there are a lot of folks that listen to the regular show. Thank you, by the way. We love it. And the regular show, it can be on the radio. We're on several radio stations. It could be on YouTube, Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher.
YouTube.
We mentioned YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you listen to the regular show and it cuts off. And then you say, I hear so many good things about the after show. I would love to listen to the after show, but there's such a high hurdle. There's such a difficult thing to listen to the after show. It's $2 a month. It's not that high of a hurdle. You guys should become Patreon supporters, and you can go to prepping2-0.com and learn how to do that. So if you're a lurker and you're in the shadows, come on out of the shadows and be a Patreon, enjoy the after show, and a bunch of other stuff that I'm not going to give you the long list, but you can enjoy a bunch of other stuff by becoming a Patreon. So thank you very much. Okay, well, let's get to what really matters, and that is our guest. We love Charlie. Charlie, let me get his bio right here. Excuse me, very inartful on my part. So Charlie Hogwood, and it's Charlie L-E-Y if you want to go Google him. Charlie Hogwood, he spent the last 10 years working as a consultant in the preparedness community, and he's the author of a nonfiction book called The Survival Group Handbook, How to Plan, Organize, and Lead People for Short and Long-Term Survival. That seems like a pretty important topic, and something there's not a lot of books out there on. And then also, in addition to that nonfiction book, The Survival Group Handbook, Charlie has also written 2 fiction books, The Unraveling and The Road Trials, and we have links to all 3 of those books in the show notes. And another thing, 2 other things about Charlie that I find interesting. Charlie is one of our colleagues. He's a PrepperNet Expert Council member. We love PrepperNet, preppernet.com, great folks. And they have an expert council that advises them on stuff, and Charlie's on that along with us. Another cool thing about Charlie, I did not know this until he told me, he was in the United States Army, and he was a scout. He was a cavalry scout, and that designation for that career field is 19 Delta. You're not going to believe this, Charlie. You're the 3rd 19 Delta I've ever met. There's a character, and 2 chapters in my books about a 19 Delta, that does some really cool, amazing stuff. So I love Cavalry Scouts. So very nice to have you. Can you say hi to our folks?
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Glenn and Shelby. So happy to be here and represent the 19 Delta community.
Very good.
Yeah, there's a bunch of you. We'll start off with some questions here. Just as a foundational question. Now, are you a real prepper, or do you just kind of sit in a big city condo and write books? Which is it?
Well, I came up the hard way. I came up when prepping wasn't even cool. So I started this way back after traveling around the world and being in the Army and seeing what happens in other countries and how things go. I realized it might not be a bad idea to set aside a couple of things, nothing serious. And I lived in hurricane country down in South Florida at the time. So it was a good idea to have some stuff, and it kind of just took off from there, and I kind of enjoyed it as a hobby. And here we are. Now I'm I'm a little overboard, maybe.
You're an expert on the Expert Council and PrepperNet. Another question for you. Why don't you tell us about the Survival Group Handbook? This seems very interesting to me.
Well, here's the thing. The Survival Group Handbook, when I started out doing consulting stuff, because I had been doing it as a non-business for a very long time. And
when you say consulting,
you really should.
Sorry to interrupt. When you say consulting, what do you mean by that? I know what you mean, but what kind of consulting?
Well, I had a lot of people asking me, how to do this. What is food storage? What are the areas of survival they should be thinking about? How much should they set aside? What kind of skills should they learn? So it turned into a thing where somebody said, hey, I'll pay you to come out and talk to our group. And that's kind of where it took off. And I was going to write a book anyway. I wanted to write something. I was really going to write a book on kids survival, honestly, because I was really big into, the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and all that. And my web guy actually came to me one day and he said, hey, I would like for you to write a book or consider writing a book on how to put groups together. And because at that time I was going through a lot of emergency management training and working with the EOC and so forth, I was going through and understanding what mutual assistance compacts are and how fire departments and police departments work with each other across county lines and city lines. So I said, okay, I'll put all that into words and convert it over to more of a survival theme. And that's where MAGS came from, which was the first version of the Survival Group Handbook, MAGS, Mutual Assistance Groups. And most everybody's heard the word MAGS now in our survival community. I started that. That was my first book. That wasn't even a thing until I made it I put it on a title. I actually borrowed that from emergency management. So here we go. That's my stamp on the planet. You've coined a phrase. Yep. And I've coined another one I'll tell you about. We'll get to it later on. That we'll see if it takes off.
Okay, but, we'll leave people hanging.
What happened?
And you mentioned mutual assistance groups. It's such a vital part of prepping. We are always saying you can't do this on your own. We refer now that we're on episode 100 plus right now, whatever this one is, and we move around the episode number. So we're actually not sure what episode number this will be, but you're going to notice this, regular listeners. We're going to be going back and referring to episodes that we've done on particular topics because we get the same question over and over again. And in many cases, we've devoted about 2 hours to it. And so episode 67 of Prepping 2.0 was Tribe, Team, and Mutual Assistance Groups with Bear from Bear Independent. It was a great show. We got into all these things. I just want to emphasize how important it is to not only have a mutual assistance group, but put a lot of thought into it. And there's probably not a mathematical formula about how to do it by any means, but put some effort and thought into it because, you wouldn't just these people, it's kind of like you're getting married to them, especially when the stuff hits the fan. The decisions you make and the characters you involve yourself with are going to be really, really vital and important. And it's important to pick a good one. It's kind of like getting married. So you wouldn't just do that willy-nilly, so don't just do mutual assistance groups willy-nilly. Well, I wanted to let folks know about one of our sponsors, which is EMP Shield. That, of course, stands for electromagnetic pulse. EMP Shield makes a device that wires into something and protects it from an EMP. You can go onto our website, prepping2-0.com, on the Friends and Affiliates tab. You'll see an EMP Shield logo. Click on that. Use the discount code Prepping 2.0 and you get $50 off one of those. So we thank you, EMP Shield. You guys have been awesome. Back to the questions for Charlie. Charlie, what's more fun to write, fiction or nonfiction?
Well, I started out writing nonfiction, and that's a lot like doing English homework. So something gave me the bug to try a fiction story, and I really enjoy it so much more because you can just let the voices run and play and get in your zone and just have a great time with it. You're not bound to as tight play with facts and so forth. And take a little liberty and have a little bit more fun. Things might be a little bit more extra when you write fiction. So yeah, it's a lot more fun to write fiction work.
Boy, and I can concur with that. I don't have a nonfiction prepping book out there. Not a lot of people know this, and I'm not going to give any details because I'm very mysterious about, my real identity. I've actually written a legal book, like a legal reference book on a particular law. And I write a lot of legal briefs. And can I just tell you, that's not fun. It is not fun. It is not creative. It is so much more fun to just let your mind flow and all these amazing people you've met and cool experiences you've had to just kind of connect all those dots and let it flow. Yeah, it is a lot more fun. That being said, we're going to come out whenever we write it, and who knows when that is. Let's be really honest. I mean, we might be in a war. Actually, by the time you hear this episode, we could be in the middle of a war. We don't know. So we're going to do our best, and that's a nonfiction book on food preps called Food Preps 2.0, all the stuff we've learned, kind of the systems of it. But I bring up the nonfiction topic to say, the prepper nonfiction topic to say, it's really important for you guys to read prepper nonfiction books because there's so much experience out there. Why reinvent the wheel? And again, the stakes are so high about not having water that makes everybody sick and that sort of thing. So I don't think we give enough attention to prepper nonfiction.
So I'm going to jump in here and give a wholehearted yes to that. And I think Charlie would agree with me. When I go to prepping expos and events, much like Charlie, we were talking about one that he was at recently before this, is I go to the book dealer. There's always a book dealer at one of these places. And I look for those books that you're never going to find in a bookstore. Are there bookstores anymore? Are you allowed to go in them?
I don't even know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But you're not going to find, how to tan fur, tanning practices 101, how to, yeah.
Find a lot of books by Oprah.
Yeah, you do. You find a lot. And whatever books that I will never buy. But in terms of my reference manuals, I do buy, and you know that you can attest for me. Yeah,
I think every prepper, but really every mutual assistance group needs to have a reference library. I really think so, and obviously it needs to be hard copy. Well, enough about that. Charlie, This question and answer fascinates me. I've heard different answers from different people, and they're always good. So expectations are high, sir. What can preppers learn from prepper fiction?
Well, I think let me see if I can give you the non-traditional answer. The traditional one is, okay, you can hear how to do things in context, perhaps. But I think one of the things that you can learn from it is what drives people into bad decision making. So when you're reading a story, it's kind of like, it's almost like watching a scary movie. It's like, don't go in the attic or, get out of the basement. But they do it anyway. And when it comes to prepper fiction, you can almost see the setup to a bad decision. And I think by putting it into a story type of context, when you go to really experience it, I think that might parallel your real life activity a little bit closer than just reading a nonfiction, okay, this is what I got to do. Because, yes, it's very important to learn how to make fire in cold weather and rain and all that kind of stuff. But it's not until you read a story and you really get engrossed into a character who's suffering through hypothermia and then walks you through the steps of the shivering and then is trying to make that fire, that maybe you put together, wow, that's not like it says in the Boy Scout manual where you just rub some sticks together and we're all good. So I think that's why and how you can learn a little bit more. You can reinforce and maybe get over your confirmation bias and these other biases that you have where you've read or watched a YouTube video and you think you got it all figured out. So I'll go with that answer and say that you can learn from an in context type of situation what does work, what's not going to work, and when you're jumping up and down and saying no, don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Very good. So agree with that. So real quick, we just want to give another great shout out to one of our great sponsors, Numana Foods. They are the hallmark of freeze-dried bulk foods. They also offer special dietary needs. They've been a great sponsor of Prepping 2.0, and as a result, they're giving Prepping 2.0ers a great little coupon code. Go over to our website, prepping2-0.com, click on Friends and Affiliates. You'll see their logo there. Use the coupon code PREP, and you will get 10% off your order. And I want to throw this in there. Go over to our Friends and Affiliates page.
Just look at all the folks.
There's lots of coupon codes over there, but wanted to highlight Numana. They do a great job and a great way to stock up on long-term food preps in a bulk manner.
Yeah, okay. So, and another question for you, Charlie. We're just rolling along here. How did you manage? Well, let me back up and say this. I have given Shelby the Nostradamus Award. It was awarded by me. It has really no meaning other than it was awarded by me because in her books, she wrote these in 2016 about Antifa and wildfires in Portland being complete riots, being completely
crime,
messed up, and the police being. So I gave her the Nostradamus Award.
The president and the governor going at it.
All these things. So I think, Charlie, you might be a rival candidate for the Nostradamus Award. How did you manage to design a contagion so much like COVID before it was a real thing in your books?
Well, so the first book of the Bound to Survive series, called The Unraveling, it came out before COVID came out. And what I wanted to do was create this series about everyday people that got together and had to survive some sort of a thing. And I decided to call it The Unraveling for the fabric of society kind of thing. And I'm thinking, well, how can I do that would be believable, but can get to the point and be more realistic, like almost where you feel like, okay, Matt Damon's going to come running out and sign up for the movie, like in Contagion. So what I did is I researched a lot of influenza. I took a lot of my experience dealing with emergency management and mass prophylaxis and all of the different things that they prepare for at the FEMA and Homeland Security level, and said, okay, what is it they're afraid of? And I said, okay, now let me dig into that. And I came up with a version of something that was as dangerous as the avian flu, as contagious as Ebola, maybe even more so. But the problem with Ebola is that it's a 21-day incubation period. All you got to do is put somebody in a room and wait and see if they got it. You can separate them. I wanted people to be contagious almost immediately and be asymptomatic so that this thing could just blow up throughout, the population. And by doing that, and it starts off with some human trafficking and some issues with Venezuela and so forth that snuck in across the border. And that's what it did. It blew up and caught everybody unaware during flu season. And I wanted that disease to just really take off. And turns out that the COVID-19, when it first started, I was tracking it in January. I said, oh, we better start watching this. The book was already out. And it had a lot of the very same characteristics with asymptomatic contagion. It was shadowing the normal flu season. And it actually gets called the shadow flu in the first book. And that's where it took off. And I've gotten some pushback by why did I prognosticate such a pandemic? We've only been very lucky that it didn't turn out to be so far as deadly in the mutations as mine does. Now, the COVID they were figuring about 16 days before it could become fatal for certain people. 14 days. Mine was 16 days. So the real one was 14 days. Mine was 16 days before you either get better or you keel over and convulse. So that's a lot of things matched it. The social distancing, the quarantine issues, all of that stuff, how people were like, oh, no, it'll pass. It's just the flu. well, you'll see a lot of those parallels. And well, here we are.
Well, it sounds like you cooked up an imaginary worst case scenario virus, and it sounds like the Chinese actually made it and unleashed it on us. No, I'm just kidding. No, actually, I'm being very truthful.
There is some corporate conspiracy in there once you dig into the book a little bit. So who's pulling those strings? You'll have to see.
Exactly. Wanted to mention another sponsor, Backwoods Home. This is a great magazine. Comes out quarterly. It is kind of a reference piece. We keep them all. They're on our coffee table, and we go back and refer to them. It's so great to get something in the mail, by the way, like a hard copy kind of thing. And if you go on our friends and affiliates page, prepping2-0.com, you will see their logo, and you enter the coupon code 6OFF, and it's $6 off for a year. Well, we have about 3 minutes before we break for our first segment. Of course, we'll be back after that, and Patreons will hear us in the after show. So I'm going to ask you a big question, and we're probably going to have to cut you off in about 3 minutes, but see what you can come up with, Charlie. That is this. Where do you find your inspiration for your writing?
Well, I started in the fiction world, the nonfiction world, thinking I could write my way out of things and everything would be fine. And then I started participating in the prepper world. And by participating, I mean, I have met people from from coast to coast, top and bottom, side to side in this country. And at expos, at training, at the numerous groups and different types of things that I've interviewed for my writing. And there are so many characters. You've seen them. I've had the pleasure and less pleasure to meet so many of the people that we've all seen on TV, and you're like, wow, that is crazy. A lot of the doomsday prepper type people that some of them are actually really nice. They just got taken advantage of on the TV. But that's where I get the inspiration, is actually being out, being involved in this industry, and my real life. Before then, as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, as a contractor. So many of those experiences in the military, and I said, you know what, I should just draw on all of this. A lot of the characters in the book they come from people I know or I've met. The craziest of the people that you read in this series are actual, real, inspirational people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not inspirational, but they were inspired by real people. The names are changed to protect all of us.
Exactly.
But Guillotine Guy and all of those are all very real people that I've met along the way.
Yeah, that was our experience too. We just had all these interesting friends. Mine in particular, about 97% of the people in book one of my series are all real. I do this thing where, I have this really creative character. He's this 6-foot Korean gunfighter who sells insurance. And everyone's like, that's crazy. You're so creative. And then we'll do this at expos. His name's Pow in the books. And we'll sit there and we'll say, yeah, crazy 6-foot Korean gunfighter sells insurance named Pow. Isn't that crazy? And he'll be at the back of the room. I'll say, hey, Pow, introduce yourself to everybody. And they look at him and they go, oh my goodness, this is real. I had no creativity with characters. They were all just people I knew, but I kind of stitched them all together. Well, we are coming up on a break, and we are going to come back with Charlie Hogwood. We're going to talk more about prepper fiction, what you can learn from it, all kinds of cool experiences. Charlie's done a lot in this industry. He's got a lot of good knowledge, so stick around and get yourself some more good knowledge.
More of Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher is coming right up. Hear all our previous shows free online at prepping2-0.com.
PrepperNet, where preppers unite. Looking to meet other like-minded people in your area? Looking to start your own prepper group? Already have a group? Join PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet has gathered the biggest names in the industry to help unite preppers everywhere. Join John Jacob Schmidt, Scott Hunt, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, Glenn Tate, Shelby Gallagher, Charlie Hogwood, Samuel Culper, Survivor Jane, Rick Austin, Franklin Horton, Ryan Mitchell, and Brian Duff. Our team is united. Check us out at PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet, where preppers unite. PrepperNet.com.
Shelby Gallagher here. We found that you need to layer your food preps.
Yeah, this is Glenn Tate here. A lot of times the hardest part of layering is the long-term foods. We love Numana Foods, which have a 25-year shelf life and are non-GMO. Also, organic meals are available.
Numana comes in family-style portions and in bulk. This is not backpacking food. It's family meals that last for at least 25 years. The perfect freeze-dried part of your food layering.
You can get a sample of Numana meals for $19.95 and see for yourself. You will be amazed.
Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount by entering the code PREP.
Go to Numana.com or click the link on the Prepping 2.0 website.
Give it a try. Numana.com. That is Numanna.com.
When the grid goes down, darkness will descend fast. Used to be there was nothing you could do about an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, or CME, coronal mass ejection. Now you can protect your electronics, protect your family, thanks to EMP Shield. EMP Shield invented a simple-to-install device that prevents whatever's connected to it from frying in an EMP or CME, and it costs just a few $100s. EMP Shield has been tested by independent laboratories and passed muster with the government, which has ordered lots of them. Google EMP Shield and see for yourself. And save some money. Get a $50 discount per device. Go to prepping2-0.com. Click on the Friends and Affiliates page, then click on the EMP Shield logo. At checkout, use coupon code PREPPING 2.0. It's all one word.
Abe Lincoln here. In 1773, patriots broke the chains of British tyranny by throwing tea into Boston Harbor. On that day, Americans began drinking coffee. We celebrate that event daily here at Minutemen Coffee. All men are created equal. Coffee is not. Minutemen Coffee is roasted to perfection in small batches. Bold, smooth, and never bitter. Shipped to you fresh daily. Whole bean, ground, or our patented pods. www.MinutemenCoffee.com.
Prepping 2.0 is about that next level of prepping. One of the key 2.0 items to have is bulletproof body armor plates. I used to think body armor was too tactical for a regular guy like me, but it isn't. Give yourself, your family, and your team an unfair advantage when bullets are flying. Body armor used to be expensive and hard to get. Not anymore. KD Armor, and that stands for Come and Take It, makes solid and affordable body armor for normal people. Get body armor while you can. The clowns in Congress are trying to prohibit future sales. KD Armor is the place to get it. CATI Armor.com. Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount when you use the coupon code GRANT.
Now, more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher over here at Prepping 2.0, along with my co-host Glenn Tate. And we have with us today author Charlie Hogwood, fellow dystopian author.
And fellow PrepperNet Expert Council member.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got to stick together. Mm-hmm. So before I ask...
like a gang.
I know, it's like a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So before I jump into my next question, and I really am excited to ask him this, do one last mention, or one final mention of one of our great sponsors, Minutemen, plural, Minutemen Coffee. Check them out at MinutemenCoffee.com. Good luck on any given day. If you want to go on social media and find them on Facebook, they keep getting deplatformed and unpublished by Facebook. But
for selling coffee,
golly,
I mean, what's that all about?
Well, anyway, don't get me started.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to end up starting a whole nother show topic.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to our website, again, go to prepping2-0.com, click on Friends and Affiliates, click on their logo. It'll take you to their website, which is great. And use the words, I Miss America, when you check out, and you'll get 15% off. And you can also be sure to add to your order the I Miss America blend.
Yes, because that's the coolest one.
That's the coolest one. And
That's
I'm
right.
not kidding.
It's delicious.
It's really good coffee. So, Charlie, I'm so excited that you're here because it sounds to me, and I'm going to full disclosure, I've not read Charlie's books, but I want to now because his what he writes about ends up in headlines, kind of like me. So I feel like we're a kindred spirit. So, question, why do you, and I think I know the answer to this, Charlie, but it's always interesting to ask other people, why do you weave current events and headlines into your writing? What is your reason for doing that? I know mine. What are yours? Mm-hmm.
Well, my primary reason is because I'm a news junkie, and I just feel that it brings another level of realism and accuracy to a story. Just as I use real places, in the geographical terms, I like to use the real headlines because people can say, well, that sounds really familiar. I just saw that on the news the other day. And I want to make the story feel real And in all of the things that we've gone through in recent years, from disasters to wars and insurgencies and all this other stuff that we're dealing with, it's real. And I want you to get engrossed in these characters and feel their pain and relate to them. And also, I want when you read the story, I want you to feel so close to the story that you can then see how close these problems really are and how interconnected they are, and the interdependencies between the pandemics and again, this was started before this pandemic came out. I tried to create this situation, and it turns out that everything that happened in there, because it was real, ran parallel to real life. I had so many people. Well, we all know Forrest over at PrepperNet, right? He's like, I read your book and I got to wash my hands 100 times because it felt so real. And that's really the reason why, because I want you to embrace it and confuse the reality with the fantasy.
And there's two schools of thought on this. I adopted the other one, not to say it was right or wrong, but what I was trying to do, and candidly, my editors convinced me to do this. I didn't initially want to do it. And that is to make things more, quote, timeless, right? And not have specific things in there so it could apply at any time. And so what I did was I followed their advice. And then the other thing was I kept on, you'll find this funny, I would come up with stuff that wasn't even close to the current headlines. Now, I wrote mine quite a while ago. It was like 2012. But I would make up these crazy things that weren't like going on because I was like, well, this will make it timeless. And then I'm not trying to compliment myself. All three of us on this show are Nostradamus Award winners because I've just awarded it to all three of us. But, all these things have come true. And much like Shelby, I know I've talked to her about this and she's mentioned this on the show. She wasn't trying to project what was going to happen. She just made up wild scenarios to illustrate other things, to illustrate how human beings are, to illustrate how things work. And it wasn't a conscious, that's probably why it worked for all three of us. It wasn't a conscious attempt to predict the future because that's impossible. We just told stories and created settings, and to varying degrees, all of our totally wild made up settings have come true. And that's amazing. So I like your approach, and my approach worked for something that was written so long ago. So there you have it. Well, Shelby, what's another question you have for Charlie?
Okay, this is a great one. I didn't have this problem so much as Glenn did because I learned to not write I wasn't going to write a 10-book series because that was just seemed too
dumb.
big. It seemed like dumb. A really long project.
Because only dumb people would do that?
So how do you keep track of such a large group of characters, Charlie? This is, and I'm saying this to all you aspiring writers out there. You need to do this. So, Charlie, what's your secret?
Well, I've got 10 and sometimes 15 different characters that I'm tracking. And that's, for my mind, it does get a little convoluted sometimes because trying to keep time and trying to keep place and everything organized in some kind of order, it does get complicated. But each of the main characters are essentially people I know, and that helps me. And that, I feel, lends a little bit of credibility to their voices because I know how they speak. I know their body languages, and I know what they do and how they act in a lot of these situations. You might recognize the doctor and the nurse in this story because it is actually, they're based on very dear friends of mine, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy. So, and I know them so well, and I have for many years, that it's easier to keep track on them. The other guys that are in the story are all based off of people I know. So I can really track them a little bit better, but it does get complicated to keep them introduced into the story. So sometimes I'll deal with my editor and come back and say, where'd this person come from? I haven't seen them in the first half of the book. So you got to go back and you got to, add them in somewhere and keep them on the tip of people's mind, or they get, they get lost in the crowd somewhere. So that becomes a challenge. But that's really what it boils down to is if you know the people and you can, I write out biographies for every character and every main character. I actually write a biography, all of their mannerisms, what they look like, what they talk like, what they do, when, what year they were born, kind of things. And then I do a summary of that. And that allows me to become friends and familiar with them in such a way that I can call them to my mind, and then I can switch into their voice as I write. So that's my strategy.
Here's a question for you. When you write a book series and some of the characters, or maybe even a lot of the characters, are actual people you know. Here's the question. Do you let people know, the real life people, that they're in a book series? Because I did with the people who were good and did good stuff. And some of the people who I know who I had doing evil stuff, and it was pretty obvious to anyone that knew that person that it was that person I was really talking about. I didn't want them to see that I made them. I basically describe what I think they're really like. Mm-hmm. So what about that? I mean, do you let people know when they're in a book, or do you hide it from some people?
Well, sometimes, yes. I let them know that I'm using them, or their likeness in some, loose fashion. But I also use the opportunity for the evil people, for the people that are a problem, the people that are just jerks. Those are real people that I've met in my life along the way, that allows me to kind of stick it to the man and not tell them maybe that they were the inspiration for this pain in the butt character. I don't know. It just because that natural frustration with somebody when you think of their name comes to mind, it's so much easier to write them in as jerky type of people. The people you love to hate. And, that's just kind of what worked for me. There are a couple of people that have kind of sideswiped me through life that I gave them cameos, and I said, hey, look, I put you in a book. Yeah. And they might not have liked me, but they're in a book, and most people be like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. So that's it.
So one of the things that I did in my book, and I'm going to give you kind of an out of left field question here, Charlie. I did combining people where there's two people in my life that remind me of each other, and I kind of would combine them so that I could get a better idea, like what you just said, so that I can speak like they would speak, or how would this person answer this question or act in this scenario. And I kind of borrow from two people. So I'm wondering, I did that quite a bit because it helped me to develop characters, I think, a little faster and better. I don't know that Glenn did that, but have you ever done that?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. On a couple of my main characters, I exactly did that. I took some of the personality traits of two different people, and I mixed them together to make it a little bit more, I don't know, maybe a little bit more exaggerated, a little bit more fun. And it allowed, like, for example, some of my personality traits I put into the sidekick that's based on a friend of mine. And because now I can put in his head how I would feel about something, and I could write that a little bit more to my liking and really flesh out that character some more. So you're absolutely right. And I think I thought maybe I was the only one done it. It just came natural to me to start mixing and blending different parts and different traits.
Interesting. Very good. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Not really. No. I'm going to ask you this question. Will there be more books to come in the Bound to Survive series? And how many maybe?
The intention for this series was really only to do 3. I didn't, you were just talking about writing 10 books. And, I know Chris, Angry American, and he's got a long series of books. I'm like, man, I don't know. Do I want to write that long of a series? I think after a while, I was just watching a TV show and they were talking about that. Eventually, your brother is a gorilla. Somebody said that on a show I saw recently. If you're too far with it, and I don't want to do that. So I think I was going to stick to, in this series, 3. I'm already working on the 3rd one now, and I'll see how it goes at the end of this, because it's gone way different than the story arc has changed since I started writing this. And when I first came up with this idea, I said, I know I can do 1. I think I can do 2, but I really want to do a trilogy. I just don't see it in my head yet. And I was entering into this thinking, how am I going to get this 3rd book written? I don't know what my story is. But that's the fun of fiction.
Yeah.
You live it, you read it, you go through it, and then you're like, wait, now I see a path. I see a very exciting path to take this around a corner into something completely different. I've already unraveled society. Now I can create something else entirely different and still keep it plausible. So I think that's where we are right now. We're going to stick with the third one, but we'll see.
Oh, very good. That's exciting to hear because, I ended mine in a 3-book series and I felt like I ended it well, but now I have people screaming that about 3 or 4 characters that they felt like that weren't wrapped up well enough. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit here and cogitate on this for about 10 years and maybe, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, and you got to think, well, did I leave it on something that I can realistically, reawaken it? So
right.
that's, we'll see how it goes.
There you go. So, all right. And you kind of answered this, but just so that people know, so you're going to wrap up this Bound to Survive series. We'll see what happens. By the way, do you have an ETA on that? Do you have an idea, or are you still working on it?
You sound like
I'm
an
still
editor.
working on it.
You sound
Actually,
like an editor,
I just got
Shelby.
started on it recently.
Okay, I do sound like an
involved in some other projects, so it's going to be a little bit yet. It's not going to be in the next couple of months for sure.
We can relate to
We can
this.
relate to
it. And then the Bound to Survive came from really based on groups. They are bound together, bound to survive, and that's why I came up with that. And the idea with that was to not have any ninjas, no superheroes, no fantasies. I wanted everyday average people who had to come together in this challenging time to try to figure this out. And hopefully they're just bound to survive. That's where we are.
You mentioned no ninjas, and this is the thing with me, and I've described it various ways. The most common way I describe it is my books, and I'm not trying to sell my books. A lot of people maybe listening have heard them or read them, so there's nothing left to sell. But I'll say this. I hate the comic book approach to prepper novels, and I can't stand it because it's such a serious topic, and I view prepper fiction, as we were talking about, as a way to inform people and captivate them and get them to think and get them to actually do things for all the reasons you mentioned earlier, Charlie, like the context, and they can see what's going on. So it's a valuable thing. The stakes are high. And then to have it turn into everybody's a SEAL Team 6 guy and everybody has a case of grenades under their bed that they stole from some military base. And I don't like that stuff. So what I did, and sounds like you did too, and I know Shelby did, the realism, real normal people who come together, who are bound together, as you would say in your series, and they do extraordinary things, maybe extraordinarily good, maybe extraordinarily bad, but it's that way of looking at how normal people who aren't on SEAL Team 6, right, which would be 99.99999% of people, how they adapt, how they do things. And that's what's really fascinating. It's people. It's not equipment, and it's not crazy things where the space shuttle flies down and picks somebody up and takes them off to Saturn or something like that. So anyway, thank you for doing it that way, because as you can tell, pretty passionate about doing it the realistic way. And also, I think, from feedback I've received, Shelby's received, and you've probably received, Charlie, tell us if this is true, people appreciate realism. They really do, because I'll say it again, and I hope I'm not offending some of my prepper fiction colleagues. The comic book stuff is prevalent, and it needs not to be. I mean, if you like that stuff, go ahead and read it. But anyway, you've heard my rant. What do you think about that, Charlie?
Well, I agree. I think my purpose for doing it was real people making real decisions and paying the price for either poor decisions or poor preparedness. They worked to get squared away so that they could survive a disaster. But what happens when they start losing things? And in my stories, they have stuff and then they lose stuff. And, without giving away any secrets, that's realistic. We talk about lots of stuff, but do we have skills to survive in case we don't have stuff? And, can we, there's a phrase that I use when I'm teaching courses on survival, and it's called graceful degradation. We all sit here in the air conditioning and everything is easy. We can watch a YouTube video on how to fix just about anything or make fire and whatever. But what happens when you don't have that? When the air goes off and the power goes off and YouTube's not there to answer your questions? What happens as you start to fall back? Everybody wants to immediately go to, well, I got to rub sticks together to make fire. No, you don't. Take a lighter and don't find yourself in that position. But what happens when the lighter no longer works? Now you've got to do the graceful degradation and fall back and say, okay, well, now I can make a fire 10 different ways with the stuff I can scavenge. So that's what my people in the books are forced to do. They have their things, they lose their things, it gets burned, broken, taken. And Murphy's Law of Survival is that the most skilled survivor died in the plane crash and all his gear burned up. What are you going to do now? Mm-hmm. So it's just you. So that's where we are, and my people. That's where I've bound my people to that ideology of, figure it out. And figure it out together. And guess what? You're going to make some bad mistakes, and people are going to get hurt and worse because of those decisions, because of that complacency, because they stopped paying attention to their security and all decided to go to sleep at night, that kind of stuff. So
the adaptability stuff you mentioned is so key. There's a phrase, I know it's in the military. By the way, I've never been in the military. I don't want to imply that I have falsely. And it is mindset, skill set, tool set. And that means in descending order of importance, mindset is the most important. Skills are the next most important. And then third and last are tools. Stuff isn't as important. And by the way, we were talking about my books. We were talking about Shelby's books. And I wanted to let folks know we have episodes on that. I have my episode sheet right here.
Oh, yeah.
For those who are interested, because we get a lot of new listeners every single show, they may not know. If you go back to episode 12, which aired on January 22nd, 2019.
You know why I remember that? That's what we had. We did Book Week that week, or we in partnership with Written Apocalypse, which is a online book group that we belong to, again under friends and affiliates. We really highlighted their books. I believe we had Dee Cooper that week from.
No, this was the episode where Glenn interviews Shelby about her books, and you talked all about your books.
This whole focus
it was part
of
of the
books.
week.
Yeah.
And then episode 13, which aired the next day, back in 2019, when the world was different, Shelby interviews Glenn about his books. And so if you're interested in those, in kind of all the same questions we're asking Charlie, all the inspirations and stuff, go back and listen to those episodes because we won't, bore you with. This is a show about Charlie's books, not our books. But I just wanted to note the commonalities before or between all those things.
Well, and I'm going to kind of jump back onto something Charlie said. I get a lot of compliments in my book, and I'm glad, again, full disclosure, I haven't read Charlie's books, but I've read enough prepper fiction of like what we just talked about, the SEAL Team 6,
the comic book stuff.
with the guy with the perfect woman who comes in and saves the day and finds his mutual assistance group at the local strip club, and because they're just
that's a good one. Try that as a storyline, Charlie.
But it's there. I'm not going to lie.
A great plan.
I'm going to feel really guilty here. But somebody sent me a transcript to read. Oh, well, tell me what you think. And I'm reading this. I can't. I can't do this. This is just this isn't real life. So I appreciate that. And the feedback that I get from my fans is probably very similar to yours, is thank you for writing a book that is actually the real struggle, the real people, what real people really go through. Mine obviously not obviously, but a female focused. So I get even more compliments on that because it's a male dominated genre, sadly, but I'm kind of geeking out here because we're talking to another author.
I know, it's weird. We never get to do this.
We never get to do this. So I'm going to change gears here really quick. So we're going to go to Charlie Hogwood. Hogwood. Oh my goodness. You need caffeine. I do. I'm so sorry, folks.
That's okay. I've been called much worse. It's no worries.
Sorry, Charlie Hogwood. You have a lot of experience in real life, not fiction life, in the world of EOCs, and we have had a discussion.
What is EOCs?
What does the EOC stand for, Charlie?
The Emergency Operations Center.
And it's a. Tell me what it is.
That's essentially where your emergency management offices and your first responders all get organized from.
In your local municipalities, yes. Mm-hmm. So we've had the discussion on this show.
Yeah. A debate, really.
Really a debate.
Our Patreons debated this.
Yes. Preppers have come at EOCs sometimes, not always, this is where the debate is, with a little skepticism with EOCs. It's like, it's OPSEC. Why would I want to let a local government agency know about me, my preps, my
And this is often
stuff
through the CERT program, CERT, which is like citizen training.
Community Emergency Response Team.
Exactly.
I'm actually a program manager and a trainer for that program.
Yes.
So everybody, we're going to get the Scoopy-Doop from Charlie Hogwood. Pros and cons, good, bad. Tell us the ins and outs.
Because a lot of folks listening are thinking, hey, if I can get a lot of good skills from the government, and if I can network, it might be a good idea. But as Shelby mentioned, they don't want to give away, their identity and stuff. What do you think about all this, Charlie? Because you obviously know the topic well.
Well, part of when I work with groups is to get them trained up and to gather their intelligence. And just because you volunteer or participate in some fashion with local government, be it through a CERT program, through volunteer firefighting, police explorers, whatever the arrangement is, why are you telling them you're OPSEC? You don't have to share with them that you store food, what your ideologies are, what your feelings are, what you are forecasting. You're there to do the volunteer work or that employment, and your privacy is your privacy. Now, you're gaining so much more from working with this. For example, with the CERT program, I'm a CERT program manager. I actually am the director in my county for CERT programs. It's a non-paid position. I teach people the programs. I run the team. We do all kinds of stuff like wilderness search and rescue, where we participate in real world missions. I'm a volunteer firefighter, and I'm advancing myself through all of these programs because it gives me information. It tells me what's going on around me. I learn from the fire department where all the bad areas are. I work with area studies with Sam Culper and Forward Observer and teach area study courses. And by doing that kind of stuff and by knowing what's going on around me, I'm informing myself. You go to the fire department, they'll tell you where the bad neighborhoods are. They'll tell you where the bad houses are.
So
they'll tell you where all the bad things happen.
I got to
do what we hate to do, Charlie.
I got to give you the hook here.
Hard clock for the radio.
Real quick, tell folks where they can reach you. Website. You
can reach me at readygoprep.com, info@readygoprep.com. You can reach me at charliehogwood.com. You spell it either way, it'll both come to me.
Great.
And author at charliehogwood.com for emails. You can anything with Ready Go Prep on all the social media. That's where I am.
Awesome. So Charlie's going to join us in the after show. So Patreons join us over there.
And in the after show, we're going to be doing mailbag questions. Wanted everyone to know about that.
Wonderful.
Yay.
Everyone have a great week. Don't forget, Benjamin Franklin says, failure to prepare is preparing to fail.
You've been listening to Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher. All the information you've heard today, including all our previous shows, is online at prepping2-0.com. Find out more about Glenn's books at 299days.com and Shelby's books at agreatstate.com. Until next time, be smart, be safe, and be prepared.